Today we have with us Glorie.
Trisha, thank you so much for having me. I'm just so pleased to be here.
His name is Reuben, and Reuben hails all the way from Liberia. We've had so many people come on our show, but by far, I think you are the one that's the farthest.
Thank you. I really appreciate coming on your platform.
Khalilah is one of my dear friends.
Thank you for having me, Trisha.
We are here today with one of my good friends, Karla.
Thank you so much for having me.
Here we have with us Nataizya Mukwavi.
Thank you for having me.
I was a career tech entrepreneur for 20-something years. I was in a very niche business called custom installation of home automation. What that was smart home before anybody talked about smart home.
I'm from West Africa, the oldest republic in Africa as a whole, and that is Liberia. My parents will earn less than $100 at the end of the month, and most of those money went on our school fees. And I would go to school every single day of the week not having lunch, and my sister and I would walk up to 15 miles to get to school every day.
The story starts from birth and goes to the age of what I am right now. When I was in my teenage years, there's a place where I had the dysfunctional family and the abuse and the neglect. And then I transitioned into my adulthood. There were still abusive relationships. Then I transitioned into my 30s. I started to travel and minister for God, and my relationship with God became very important to me.
Professionally speaking, I work at the Better Business Bureau serving mainland BC, and I'm the senior manager for media and communications there. I'm originally born and raised in Jamaica. My dad's been living in BC for several years, and he's always been telling me, hey, this is a great place. I think you'd love it there.
About 5 years ago, I was on a trip to Zambia, which is where I'm originally from. And I went with a couple of friends. They went to see the nonprofit organization that I was working with. And so on the way there, we ended up having 2 tires that blew on the drive through there. And then our car rolled. And I was taken by taxi to the hospital because I had a head laceration and my chest collapsed and just all the other things were going on. So I was in the ICU for a while, and then I got airlifted into the main city. Later on, also finding out when I was stable that my uncle ended up passing away in the car accident.
By the time we sold our last 2 businesses in 2016, I knew it was time for a change. I was also really burnt out. I really didn't know what I was going to do next. I was very much hemmed in by a very strong non-compete, non-solicit, all of those things. And so what I had been doing for 20-something years of my life, I was no longer able to do. And I really wasn't sure who I was, because if I wasn't who I'd been for all these years, who was I now?
I started to generally see problems within my community. I mean, growing up as a child, I never had access to things I need that would make me better. I never had access to opportunities that I would need to, explore as a person.
I had a car accident just before I turned 40, and I worked really hard to transition myself to a place where I could be mobile again, where I had to come out of walking, learn how to walk all over again, and take my time when it came to driving or being able to take care of things in my own home. 3.5 years later, I ended up having another car accident, and this time being hit on my driver's side, them having to crowbar me out of the car, me having to go to the hospital. Nothing was severe, but I walked out of that with having the chronic illness of fibromyalgia.
When I moved here, I actually sent out 510 job applications, and no after no after no after no. And by no, I mean just either hearing, sorry, we gave this position to somebody else, or just no response at all. And then you move from being very optimistic to starting to have doubts. And then after the first couple hundred no's, you start to say, okay, did I really make the right move? What's happening here? I'm not getting traction. The pivoting point was actually having to mentally take a back step in my career. So my first yes was actually not at the level I was when I left Jamaica. And so it meant having to work from 3 steps or even 4 steps back from where you originally were, and then rebuilding my career in a completely different direction. It takes a lot of dedication and commitment, not only to what you were planning to do, but just to the potential that you have as a human being. Even though I have to take a step back now, doesn't mean that I can't still go after the things I want, just maybe in a different way.
it was just impactful. It was so impactful to go through those challenges and then emerge on the other side for that. You never want to go through those things, but going through it was very, very good for me. There's only two things that can happen. You either win or you learn. And I spent a lot of time learning. I didn't feel like I was winning, I can tell you that. Yes, but I did feel like I was learning more about me and what I wanted to do as I moved to the next chapter of my life, and probably the second to last chapter of my career.
Having a coaching session, my coach had turned around and she was like, "You are the overcomer." Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, because she's like, that's a word you're always using. And it's an empowering word. In that place where I'm transitioning here, even the chronic pain conversation show that I did, in my life of trying to educate people, advocate for people, that's where I am right now, where I'm really trying to help as many fibromyalgia and chronic pain people.
When I got out of the hospital, I was just looking for jobs, and I was like, I don't want to go home and feel like I'm going to go back and be trapped at home, get sad. So I applied for a job, which is the job that I have now. Got back to Canada. For me, it was a good distraction in some ways. I deal with women in crisis situations, like in some way we're the community around them when they're going through that. And so for me, I think that I was able to channel that into whatever crisis I was going through personally, and to be able to be like, well, how can we best support the women in our community?
I started to recognize problems within my community. And while recognizing these problems, I started to recognize ways that I think this is the best way that we can help to solve these problems. So I generally started and I reflected and I said, I think starting an initiative of a nonprofit organization that would generally solve these problems all together, but one at a time, would be the best way to help solve these problems. And we got to do this, and I just don't want people to feel how I felt.
There's so many people that walk around, just as many as chronic pain sufferers or even more, that are emotionally in pain and you don't see it. They show up at their jobs and they show up for their family. I want to show them how to show up for themselves.